Hi, I'm Ashley and thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to share one of my all-time favourite craft activities with you. We're going to be making beeswax wraps. Now these are a real win-win both for you and the environment. Beeswax wraps can replace things like cling foil, owl foil and Ziploc bags in your kitchen, which is going to keep your food fresh, but it's also going to mean that all of that plastic, that single-use plastic, doesn't end up in our environment, particularly in our precious waterways. You can make beeswax wraps from lots of different fabrics that you might be able to upcycle, as long as it's a cotton fabric, something with a nice tight weave, 100% cotton fabric. You can use as many different colours and designs as you like. You can absolutely let your imagination run wild with this craft activity. There's just a few things that you're going to need to purchase. There's two ways that you can go about making your own beeswax wraps, and I'm going to talk you through both of them today. The first way is to use a pre-made wax bar. So you can buy wax bars that already have a great combination of beeswax and oils and resins in them, or you can purchase your beeswax, your oil and your resin as separate ingredients and mix them together. So when it comes to the beeswax, you can purchase a bar, so a little solid bar of beeswax like this, or you can purchase them as little pellets. The beeswax is going to be the waterproof waxy layer to your wraps, but you also have to add some gum resin, which is also called pine resin, which either comes in a powder form or it also comes in little chunks, and that's going to provide the stickiness or the grip that makes your wraps stick to themselves. In order to get really beautiful, soft, supple wraps, you also want to add something called jojoba oil. So those are the three main ingredients that make up our beeswax wraps. And there are two main methods that you can use to produce your wraps. One of them involves an iron and the other one involves a stovetop. And I'm going to show you how to do both of those methods. Let's start with the ironing method. The first thing you'll need to do to prepare your surface is lay down an iron-proof mat. You can use an ironing board or a towel. On top of that, you need to place some baking paper, and then you're going to get your piece of fabric. Remember to use 100% cotton, and if you cut the edges with pinking shears, it'll stop it from fraying. Now, if you're going to use one of the pre-made wax bars, all you need to do is grate it onto the surface of the wrap. So grate the wax bar so that the wax covers the surface of the wrap fairly evenly, just like that. Now, if you prefer to use the raw ingredients, the best ratio that I've found to work is ½ a cup of beeswax to 3 tablespoons of pine resin to ½ a tablespoon of jojoba oil. For a little wrap that size, that would equate to about 2 teaspoons of your beeswax sprinkled over. You want about ½ a teaspoon of your pine resin or your gum resin. The powdered form is easiest. If you've bought the little chunks, you can easily crush them down with a mortar and pestle. That can get sprinkled on top of your wrap. And then it equates to 1/6 of a teaspoon of the jojoba oil. Just a few drops. Once that's evenly distributed all over your beeswax wraps, nice and evenly, we can cover it with another piece of baking paper, and then the magic happens. Okay, this is where you have to be careful. We're going to use a hot iron for this process, so make sure that you don't burn yourself. Please don't burn yourself. Start in the middle of the beeswax wrap, and in a circular motion, you just want to gently melt down all those ingredients so that they combine together and then they can evenly distribute and soak down into that cotton fabric. You can see through the baking paper, so you can see if there are any areas that have been missed out, and you can use the iron to push the wax over to make sure all of those areas are covered. I like to use my iron on the hottest setting without any steam. Once that's done, all you need to do is peel away the baking paper. You'll see it's nice and glossy, and then you can peel away your beeswax wrap, hold it by the corners, air dry it for about 20 seconds, pop it on a nice clothes rack to dry out, and that'll be ready to use in just a few minutes. The second method is to melt your wax or your wax mix using a stovetop, and then use a paintbrush to paint that onto your fabric. Now, if you're using a pre-mixed wax bar, that is all you will need to melt. If you're using your raw ingredients, you'll just need to combine them at the right ratios, either into a little saucepan like this, or you can set up a double boiler, or what I've done here is put a little glass jar into a saucepan surrounded by some water, so it can gently melt without overheating. Now that is a little bit hot, so I'm going to make sure I pop on some gloves so that I don't burn myself. Please be very careful when you're working with hot water and the stovetop. Once your wax has melted, it'll become this beautiful, clear, golden liquid, and you can use a beautiful soft paintbrush to evenly spread that wax over the cotton. It's really important to paint it on really nice and thin. If you notice any lumps or bumps developing on your wrap, you can actually pop this entire baking tray into the oven. You want it on 150 degrees, and you only want to put it in there for 1 to 2 minutes. That'll melt the wax, which will allow you to paint it evenly to get rid of any lumps and bumps. Now, once that's done, all you have to do is pick it up off the paper, air dry it for a little bit, and within 10 minutes that will be ready to use. Now, because the wax will melt in hot water, it's really important that when you're trying to care for your wraps that you only wash them in cold water and mild soap. And it's also important that because we can't wash them in hot water, you don't wrap any meats in your beeswax wraps. But you can do so much with your beeswax wraps. You can wrap things like fruits and vegetables. If you're really clever at origami, you can create incredible little pouches or envelopes to store food or snacks in. If you're not quite that good at origami, you can literally just scrunch up a wrap, and you'll notice that it sticks to itself and forms a really nice airtight barrier in there. You can use it to cover bowls, plates, cups. You can store leftovers in the fridge just by wrapping it up with that beeswax wraps as a lid, so you won't need any single-use plastic in your kitchen whatsoever. My favourite thing to do with my beeswax wraps is to give them away as gifts. These gifts are really heartfelt because they're handmade. They're great for people to have in their kitchen, but most importantly, it's going to save that single-use plastic from ending up in our environment, and particularly from ending up in our ocean. I hope you've enjoyed making your wraps. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, keep the coast clean.